your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Well, hello there and welcome to episode 108 of Untold Radio's Down South Anomalies. My name's Jack Katz.
And I'm Esposito.
And we are broadcasting every single week in the Arch of the Blue Mountains here in Sydney, Australia on Darug land.
Darug land.
Indigenous land. And we want to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. No matter where you are in the world, we hope you are all doing fine. And thank you so much for joining us. And our moderators, bless their souls. So much is going on, but tonight's episode is Carlos Castaneda, the inspiration for Luke Skywalker.
That was just...
Well, George Lucas has gone on the record and said that Yoda and Luke Skywalker were inspired by the initial works of Castaneda there in the late 60s, 1968.
Yeah.
His very first book, which was absolutely mind-blowing and changed the course of anthropology, brought the notion of shamanism to the West, and maybe one of the greatest literary hoaxes in that regard. If he kept it as imaginative fiction, it might have been okay, but we will explore the teachings of Don Juan.
Yeah.
I'd say that Yoda was Don Juan.
Yes, Yoda was... based on
the shaman,
or
actually it wasn't so much a shaman as a sorcerer. And of course, Luke Skywalker was the man in search of infinite wisdom, which became the incredible Carlos himself, who was a Peruvian, who ended up at UCLA doing an anthropology course. But look, there is so much happening at the moment. It's not just the fog. It's not just the anomalous UAP drone, UFO flying saucer lights. And the fires. And we feel for everyone in conflict around the world and everyone with everything they own.
Just everything that's...
We need to put...
If anybody's suffering for any reason, it's...
Yeah, I don't give a damn about my arthritis pain. When I think about the world in perspective, I can live with that tiny bit of pain as age takes me over when other people's lives are threatened on a daily basis. But we have lost an incredible seer in this world, Miss Death. Someone who popularized a lot of metaphysical content behind the scenes, like a double entendre.
Well, brought it to mainstream television. I mean, the television thing was just amazing,
that last
wasn't it?
Event series, Twin Peaks, at 78 years of age, chronic emphysema, David Lynch has left planet Earth. But I'm going to sing a couple of lines from the Peter Ivies, who left way too early under mysterious circumstances, and he wrote the song for Lynch's first feature film that Mel Brooks championed in the late 80s, Eraserhead, starring the incredible late, great Jack Nance as Henry. Henry the Everyman. Well, I identified with Henry.
A lot of people identified with Henry, didn't they?
But, of course, it's David Lynch has left the building.
As you can see, it was the dreaded cigarettes there that did him in. Chronic smoker.
78 years of age. He gave the world so much.
He did.
And he was a latter-day surrealist like no one else.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure he would have been an easy man to have a relationship in. I think Isabella Rossellini could have told us that when she got the email that he was leaving. But maybe that's just mythos. I mean, we are on the internet, and what can you believe? The inversion has occurred. And some people are calling it the dead internet for good reason. Did you know that just a short while ago, the World Heritage listing, the World Monuments Fund Global Watch List, has placed the moon on its heritage watch list for protection And
from what?
primarily
protection from what?
Looting at the original Apollo moon landing site.
When they get there,
at the alleged
when?
Yeah.
No. When they get there, when?
They want to stop looting on those sites. I think Jared White had been in hysterics.
When are they going to get there?
Okay, let's not go into that.
Well, I mean, is it the looting imminent at the moment? No, it's not. No one's going there for the next, let's say, for the next year or so. No one's going to be setting foot. So we can, there's other more pressing things that we've got to worry about that are crumbling under our feet right here, right now on planet Earth. Don't worry about the moon. The moon is fine.
All right, we haven't finished with David, so let me digress back there.
Yeah.
In heaven,
all right,
everything's okay. In heaven.
Is it?
I think it is. Always had those incredible flash flames, and that was very observant of you that the fog then encapsulated Jack Nance's hairdo. And do you remember he had to wear that hair for 7 years because that's how long the production took?
If you have not seen Eraserhead, it is a surrealist masterpiece,
and it encapsulates the entire history of film in one feature. And it's also that thing of an awkward world in a post-industrial apocalypse, which I think was sort of sitting seconds from midnight right now.
Okay.
Things are happening in the ufological world like you wouldn't believe, and all it takes is one Australian. Here we go. Check this out on Saturday night, wherever you are.
News Nation Saturday. A military whistleblower risks everything to reveal new UFO evidence.
What did you see?
The video never seen anywhere until now. Hunting UFOs. Saturday only on News Nation.
Well, the whistleblowers are falling out of the woodwork like you wouldn't believe. And Jack Barber, who is an ex-US Air Force veteran, helicopter pilot, speaks about a story of picking up an anomalous object that was like a massive, huge white egg without any seams whatsoever. And these are people now, not like David, who I think David is on the record of being honest, but they have actual first-hand witnesses. It's not second, third, fourth, first-hand witnesses.
It's not anecdotes. It's these people are.
But talking about a pioneer in the field of ufological research when it comes to the media, it's not just Ross Coulthard, because Ross may be considered behind the scenes a pioneer.
You kid on the block, baby.
He's not James Fox, is he?
No, he's
James
not.
Fox knocked our socks off.
He did.
In the early 90s with Out of the Blue, one of the most extraordinary documentaries, and it raised the bar. Everything has been like lowering the bar. Have you seen the Jerry Springer doco? Have you seen
Vince McMahon.
Mind doco. I mean, talk about lowering the bar.
I tell you what, I'm ready to push that red button on humanity.
Shh, don't be like that.
But these people.
The truth is, James Fox liberated it, and in a way gave it an authenticity we hadn't seen before. And that's because he's so passionate.
I know what I saw. That was amazing.
I know what I saw. It's astounding. Now, have you seen Phenomena? People need to see this. I know it's sitting for free on Tubi and on YouTube.
There are cases that are not explainable in conventional terms.
That have been made by credible observers of relatively incredible things.
When we got right up to it, it lit up.
Was this a warning? Was this an attempt to communicate?
Felt scared. I was running and playing, and then I saw this maroon color in the sky.
It was not anything from this earth.
He was looking at all of us. Maybe they're trying to communicate.
They were reaching out to us.
There is an immense array of unanswered questions and an urgent need to get to the bottom of it.
The public has a right to know.
My gosh, look at this thing.
The question is no longer if they are here, but why.
What are they doing? What do they want from us? What are their motivations?
For over 75 years, there have been sightings in the sky.
The UFO shut down several missile silos in Montana.
Thousands of witnesses worldwide.
It had to be a data collection. I'm sure they scanned the warhead.
Just kind of hovering there. It never changed its longitudinal axis. And then it goes poof, and it takes off the side.
And high-level cover-ups.
The government was covering up what happened at Roswell.
Hiding these dark secrets.
I was told there wasn't anything there when I knew there was.
People need to know there is something else out there.
Yes, there had been visitation, crashed craft, material recovered.
Shouldn't we be spending some money to study all these phenomena?
I knew this was breaking news for the front page of the New York Times.
They were trying to communicate, trying to tell us something.
Now it's time to tell people about it.
These things are real. They're here. This is happening now.
C3 Films, incredible production company. James Fox is a pioneer. If you haven't seen that documentary, please check it out. You know, the truth
the
is...
sadness with that documentary, I was just going to say, is that it was supposed to come out just before, you know, the pandemic hit.
Yeah, we weren't supposed to mention that word.
No, it did. No, I'm not saying anything. It did. It was a fact. I mean, seriously, when it hit... you know, all cinemas shut down.
It was going to have a major theatrical release.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was supposed to be the final film. I believe he'd done 3 docos before that, out of the blue. I know what I saw, and there's an earlier, more primitive documentary. But the truth of the fact, every single time he has gone in there as a producer, a director, a person in front of the camera as a journalist, he has done such a profound job that all you need is one of his documentaries to show you that there is overwhelming proof for the validity of this phenomena. Let's not get into a hypothesis of what they are
and where they're from and blah, blah, and how they got here.
Come on, wake up humanity, drop the ridicule. Yeah. But then something happened directly after that worldwide incident.
Absolutely.
He released another doc.
In 1996, the people of Varginha, Brazil, witnessed a UFO event that would change their lives forever.
Só que ele planava, ia perdendo lentamente a altitude e ia caminhando.
Call it another Roswell, if you will. It is a crashed vehicle that had beings on board.
Mas que eles não poderiam admitir a verdade. A população ia entrar em colapso.
Nada temos a esconder.
Finally, the facts will be revealed.
The Virginia case is considered the most well-kept secret in the military circles of Brazil.
My objective here is to put some clarity on what took place in Varginha, Brazil, January 1996.
2 seres extraterrestres foram capturados, depois, posteriormente, foram levados para o hospital.
The witnesses are some of the most compelling testimony I've ever heard.
Meu nome é Carlos de Souza.
Meu nome é Cátia Xavier.
Meu nome é Liliane Silva.
Meu nome é Valquíria Silva.
Em 1996, eu vi uma criatura estranha ali.
Action! A lot of people in this town have a little piece of the puzzle.
Naquele local, eu vi o rastro da criatura perto.
Foi onde ele falou que eu vi era uma coisa sobrenatural.
This year,
Mark Elixerez, he had captured this creature with his bare hands.
Você confirma que o seu irmão estava de serviço naquele dia 20?
Confirmo.
After he captured the creature, he developed this infection that wouldn't go away.
Foi pro CTI de manhã, 7 horas da manhã, 15 para o meio-dia, ele veio a óbito.
this can no longer be covered up.
They might shoot us because we're on the property.
This can't be denied.
Bateram na porta e aí falaram para mim.
Ficar quieto. Se qualquer que ia sofrer uma punição muito severa.
This was proof.
We pull this off. It'll be the most compelling testimony revealed.
Of contact.
Aqui, ó. Foi aqui.
This is a level of confirmation that only a handful of people on this planet have.
Breathtaking.
It is. It's an
Incredible
amazing
work.
documentary.
It's astounding case,
Yeah.
but just one of a multiplicity of cases
I know.
like that. But if it wasn't for the investigative work of James Fox, and I believe he was under some real strife at the end of last year. I hope that's gone away for him.
Yeah.
But the truth is now, in the midst of the true insanity that's going on,
Mhm.
he has just released. I mean, this
No.
was a man that was stopping, you
Yeah,
know,
but
3
this-
films ago.
But this is the thing. This phenomena has been going on for so long now, and instead of it dying down, it just keeps ratcheting up all the time, and more people, more and more high-level people are coming out and speaking out, and like they're saying now, they're having Senate hearings into this thing, and it's like people can't keep putting on blinkers. Do you know what I mean? I mean, the Senate hearings are not a cheap thing or a thing
You
that they're
can't
just going to
dismiss
throw
it now.
together.
You cannot dismiss it
Yeah,
now.
but you'd be surprised how many people do.
Once you get first-hand eyewitnesses, people that have been there in the field and they've got the credentials, well, what have you got?
In 2017, the New York Times published a story exposing a secret government program investigating UFOs.
That story was kind of a catalyst for a lot of things that have happened since. Members of Congress started to ask questions.
Instruments report there is something there. There are flight characteristics that we can't explain.
UAPs are unexplained. It's true. They need to be investigated.
Here we are having a hearing where just a few years ago, we didn't even acknowledge that these things were real.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
You're telling me people have come forward claiming firsthand knowledge of craft of non-human origin?
That's correct. We have sources who have asserted not only that there have been crashes, but there have been crash retrievals.
Do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they human or non-human?
Non-human.
I'm sitting here today because the American people are being lied to.
We are the American government, and we are open, and we're going to be open about this.
What has been revealed:
non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity.
Is only part of the story.
The pressure's on. The Pentagon, the CIA, they're going to have to answer the man.
Some are risking everything.
Have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life?
Yes, personally.
To uncover the rest.
What is being done to verify the assertion that the U.S. government has spaceships of non-human intelligence in their possession?
That kind of revelation unearths people's beliefs.
I would go to jail to say things that I've been exposed to in the program.
I'm hanging to see that one.
Oh, that is here,
Yeah.
the program, and the beautiful, extraordinary narration that has covered decades of the work of
Yes.
James Fox
Yeah.
by the actor Peter Coyote. His voice is just, it lends so much more authenticity to it. But the truth is, if anyone's going to smash the door of this notion of disclosure open,
it's going to be James Fox.
James Fox and Ross. They're out there pummelting at mainstream media.
Yep.
What a force both of them are. But that's not what you're here for tonight.
No, it's not.
You are here for Carlos Castaneda, the inspiration for Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker. Well, Castaneda was 1968, I think that extraordinary book was released to the public. But prior to that, there was someone very similar to Carlos, Lobsang Rama. Do you remember Lobsang Rama, Aspersia? 1956. Yeah, let's go to Lobsang's book there.
That's Lobsang Rama.
Yeah, and Living with
a
Lama. 1956, he did the book The Third Eye. That was his most popular book. The reason I put that out, this was like the Sons of Siamese. Now, I shouldn't be doing a play on the Son of Sam there. Look at that Maury Terry documentary and know he went further.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Netflix. But Living with Lama was translated to him from his Siamese cat, a bit like our lost Anton. Now, Lobsang Rama was supposed to be this incredible seer, a monk with knowledge from Tibet. Basically, he was Cyril Henry Hoskin. He was the son of a plumber from Plimpton in Devon. He was a surgical fitter by trade.
Right.
And when he was investigated for the validity of his information, his teachings, lots of people were saying, oh, this guy is completely fraudulent. And he said one day, walking in a path in Plimpton there, a lama had actually walked into his body and taken over.
Okay.
And so we know many researchers that believe that story is factual. And look, everything's up for grabs. But I just thought he'd throw him in there because he is a good counterpoint to Carlos Castaneda. Now, Castaneda, I'm not sure whether he did 9, 10, 11 books. Some of those books were not just ghostwritten, but they're endorsed by Carlos Castaneda. But they were the members of his witches, which was a pack of women that all had to get covenant women that had to all get their hair cut short, so they looked rather male. This was towards the end of Castaneda's
that's starting to get a little
clear
bit
green, association there. It strains Heaven's Gate.
Well, when these spiritual leaders start telling people how to dress, how to cut their hair, and it's usually women, as usually. Then you've got to kind of go, really, if your teachings are that, enlightened, then why do you need to tell people what to look like and what to wear and how to cut their hair, But seriously, aren't we above these earthly, trappings,
Before that all went down, I mean, this man was a student at UCLA.
Right.
And this book particularly became the basis of his doctorate.
Yes.
And his thesis, and he became an anthropologist because of that book, but he also became a literal millionaire overnight.
Yes,
and that book was written at a very young age. If you can work our way through the titles there, these books caused a revelation in their time. They were the first time that the West really embraced the notion of shamanism. It was the Nagal, the divine, everything. He's cited as the most controversial anthropologist that ever lived. It was the whole notion that plants have spirit and they will teach us what we desire to know, and especially the peyote, the sacred ancestral fungus. And for academics, this was the ultimate transgression, breaking the boundaries between the observer and the participant. Not done in the social sciences. if you're going in there as an anthropologist, your job is to observe, write, and leave the scene untarnished. So I think a lot of the ufological stuff seems to be anthropological, doesn't it, at times?
Well, who knows?
They do seem to just appear to observe and then leave the scene untarnished. But of course, he didn't. He became a participant. And look at this. Here's the audio book, and who's it narrated by?
Peter Coyote.
Which is quite an interesting circle there.
Yeah.
So let's get a little bit of background through a couple of trailers on Carlos and this period of time, because this is just so astounding. Oh, okay. Thank you, Aspasia. Yeah. You are on Down South Anomalies, and we're a husband and wife team, so you're going to hear a little bit of cross-talk and time. No, archie-barchie.
Never.
All right. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Carlos never worked with a real shaman. He worked with a sorcerer, Don Juan. He told these incredible stories, and we asked him if he could write them down. So he started writing a little bit. And he had a great sense of humor, by the way, a very funny man. We said, that's great, bring another one, and so on. So soon he had almost a book length.
I do think that the lineage of Castaneda was unique. There's no other sorcerer's lineage that speaks in the way that he speaks.
Sometimes we get lost in all of the stories, and sometimes we stay in all the stories, but to actually realize that what he achieved in his books is something each one of us can achieve. I had sat at the feet of many teachers, listened to many stories, but I didn't hear enough of how I could do it. But yet here was this man, Carlos Castaneda, who said, you can do this. You're much more than you think you are. Let me show you the way.
He was very personable, and he was one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. I mean, he was a sublime mimic. He could mimic anyone, including myself.
He kept us waiting and waiting and waiting, so the dramatic tension was arising until suddenly, and he comes out in the middle of the carnival and jumps up onto the stage and immediately challenges. He says, you think I'm Carlos Castaneda? How do you know? How do you know that I'm not pretending to be?
He might have very likely drawn from his imagination, from his dreams, from his, shall we say, borderline states of consciousness.
So in other words, an author can write a character, particularly in this zone, like Carlos did. But when you're writing this kind of literature, you're in a zone where people are very vulnerable. So you're playing to a human need and also a weakness.
Для меня в Кастанеде было важно то, что мне нравится в суфизме, это то, что беседы происходили в кафе на бензоколонке. Это происходит вот оно здесь. Вот это могло быть в этой закусочной. Он мог сидеть на этой скамейке.
He saw what he was doing as a preparation for death, but not to achieve a peaceful death. He sort of had this image of the afterlife as being like a sort of the cosmic Western, with a lot of evil entities, and he has to be sort of prepared and strong. He didn't see death as an interesting journey.
В какой-то момент я замечаю, что мои глаза как будто перестают смотреть. Мне как будто бы нечем смотреть на окружающий мир. И что я уже не совсем человек. Я все-таки приоткрыл глаза, и я не увидел там людей. Я увидел лес.
I finished it. I handed it to the publisher, and the publisher said, well, we really should check with Castaneda. And Castaneda said, no, don't publish that. Not yet.
Really?
Yes. Honest.
Castaneda?
Yeah. And then so I waited. Thank God for Castaneda.
When I was coming out, this man that looked at me in a very strange, very penetrating way rushed behind me, and then he hit me very hard in my back. So I was very shocked. Of course, my internal dialogue, it stopped completely,
And in a way, I had a glimpse of mind's nature. And he smiled at me and he said, this is the way they will recognize you in the future. And then he left. And I never saw him again. I ran to my father. Do you think that it was Don Juan? Well, Carlos said it was Don Juan, and he was the one that marked me. And that was the sign that he saw that afternoon in that auditorium.
So it's really interesting in terms of, does it really matter about the validity of Carlos's work?
Yeah.
Because do we shoot the messenger or do we try and put together the message? And Lobsang Rama and Carlos were able, in a way, that people from that culture interacting in a sacred way, a ritualistic way with nature, weren't able to convey to the West. And in many ways, they raised the consciousness of shamanism. And then the Dalai Lama was asked about the validity of Lobsang Rama and said, look, I think it's completely fraudulent. But has it helped? Yes, it has. It's raised the profile of what's occurring in Tibet.
Eastern mysticism.
Now, this is unfortunately, this is the opposite for the Yahweh tribe that he spoke about getting involved with the sorcerer. The sorcerer are not meant to actually expose those things, those sacred rituals, to anyone that is not part of the tribe. Plus, the shaman is supposed to be there for the tribe in providing that the crop is okay, that the rains come,
making sure that the community
it's
is
all
going
about
to
the community
prosper and go forward.
But what the West was searching for was, again, the myth of the individual. So what the West was searching for is that personal, transpersonal experience, that enlightenment, that uplift. And so people ran to this literature en masse. I think at this point in time, and it's very difficult to actually gauge the numbers, but I think 17 million to 20 million of that first book or his books have been sold worldwide.
That's a lot,
so
especially for back then.
It shows you that there's this thing similar to like communion, this need.
Do you think there was
there.
At a time, because I was kind of that where the church, people were leaving the church, they
You've
were
got a point there.
really disillusioned with organised religion and were looking for something,
I know that
personal, transpersonal, transformations for each one. So they were looking for some sort of a spiritual meaning to their lives, and so but we're turning away from organized religion, and so that's why Eastern philosophies and mysticisms became very popular at that time, and these guys were the conduits to introducing the West to them. You know what I mean?
Is initially academia didn't literally question the text, and when the second and third book came out, because you're on a roll here, you've got to stay on top of your game. You're only as good as your last performance.
Your last book,
performance. Academics started to see inconsistencies and repetition and things occurring with the sorcerer, the shaman, Don Juan, that were not the same as the original book. Don Juan became a much more light-hearted, comical character like Carlos himself in the second and third book. And in the first one, he was very serious and instructional. So these inconsistencies, you know who became one of the greatest critics around 1975? Was Richard DeMille, the son of Cecil DeMille.
And Cecil B. DeMille.
Yeah, so he went down there to destroy that story. He did find that there was enough proof to show that Carlos had been in Mexico, been involved with this tribal group of people, that they weren't always stationary. Some of them had been displaced years ago. Some of them had become nomadic. And there appeared to be a few individuals, especially one, that fitted the profile. But it looks like there was a problem with the motivation behind Carlos. And they also discovered in the second and third book complete plagiarism. So he had gone into the library and gone extensively into the cut and paste and putting it into his own words. let's have a look at a very obscure documentary we found about 15 years ago that goes into a little bit more of the darker, conflicted and paradoxical side of the extraordinary author and anthropologist. Was he a worldwide hoax? Was this worse than Piltdown Man?
Allow your thoughts to dissolve. Relax your mind.
Your consciousness has awakened. There is no past. There is no future. There is only now.
Carlos Castaneda was a best-selling author for 30 years. Carlos erased his personal history and remade himself anew.
Who was he?
Not many people were serious scholars of shamanism until Castaneda brought it into the wider public.
He seemed to be coming out with a real ethnographic account of drug use and visiting other worlds that hit the scene at just the right time.
Dream explorers are among the great scientists of our time.
Why follow Carlos?
The bearers of the knowledge are hunting us. They will hunt us in dreams where our left brain inhibitions and everyday preoccupations are released.
At that party, he did give us some sorcerer's food. It was mildly psychoactive substances. I was in love. I was in love. I was in love with Carlos. Why didn't he want to have sex with me?
I think he did brainwash these women.
People seem to think that Carlos was sort of a P.T. Barnum type, a real con. And I think that Carlos really was a seeker who believed in what he was doing. And if you weren't there for that call, that was an omen that you weren't energetically available.
When a man embarks on the path of sorcery, he becomes aware in a gradual manner that ordinary life has been forever left behind. Every bit of knowledge that becomes power has death as its central force.
When he died, we were all told very different stories about his death. I was glad, really, that he was gone.
Carlos called it the solitary journey. Ultimately, you will face your death alone. No promise of heaven. And I think those that were damaged most by Carlos are those that expected the most from him.
It's only the terrible impact of Don Juan's teachings that I came to realize how important it is to be here now.
We descended into the darkness then, but it's great that we
you know.
all are here now. And there the story gets darker. It actually reaches an incredible point of predictive pop culture with a vanishing point. Do you remember that film, Vanishing Point moment, which we shouldn't laugh about because it led to the death, the possible death. The real death of one person and the possible death of 4 others, maybe 5 others, maybe more in Death Valley, because Carlos had told them that he wasn't going to die. He was actually going to transform into solid light and dissipate. And when he died from liver cancer, that was really disappointing.
Well, maybe his soul did. I mean, because the earthly body is going to remain on Earth. But the soul, if you believe that the soul is, that's right, that the body is a container for this soul, then the soul is just going to...
And I think he'd left information stating with, especially Patty was 19 years of age, they found her body after 4 years.
Well, he drove into the desert.
Well, he told them to drive high speed into the desert. And at one point, like Vanishing Point, the car will just dissipate. And go into that higher dimension.
I think what happened was it just ran out of petrol and they died of thirst, I'd say.
So
because her body was found later, wasn't it?
Yeah.
As
hers was the only body. The rest is still a mystery.
The others
and they
are
were
gone.
called the witches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think in many ways, if you haven't read these books, read them. They are revelatory works.
Absolutely.
Especially the very first 3. Look at them in order. They are just astounding. 4 years he was supposed to have roamed the desert and got this information where he became the Nagual.
Yeah,
he became the divine itself.
Right.
Everything.
Well, maybe he did. I mean, you don't know.
You know.
Don Juan, I can't do it anymore. I think I have exhausted myself.
You haven't even begun yet.
I am too afraid.
So, you're afraid. Why do you have to push so hard to persuade me that you don't want to learn anymore?
I feel that I'm betraying you, Don Juan. I think that's why I'm always talking about it.
You're not betraying me.
I have failed you. I have run away. I feel I am defeated.
You do what you can. Besides, you haven't been defeated yet. What I have to teach you is very hard. I, for instance, found it perhaps even harder than you.
But you kept at it, Don Juan. My case is different. I gave up. And I have come to see you, not because I want to learn, but only because I wanted to ask you to clarify what happened to me.
You came because you wanted to come. Once you decided to come to me, you should have put all your petty fears away. A man goes to knowledge as he goes to war, wide awake, with respect, and with absolute assurance.
You know what? I would like to think, at the end of the day, the Gaia theory, that Earth is a female and everything is alive, including what we perceive to be the stationary because of its vibratory resonance. So you get a little bit sick at the end of the day of this endless array of males coming out that they are
trying
the
to enlighten the
ones.
world. Yeah. And then telling you how to dress and how to put your hair, you know, what to do with your hair.
Let's hear a few words, though, from one of the books.
The following is an excerpt from the book Magical Passes, in which Carlos discusses conversations he had with Don Juan about the nature of dreaming and how to use dreaming to access other worlds. There is a link to the book in the description. The reading begins. Don Juan Matus defined dreaming as the act of using normal dreams as a bona fide entrance for human awareness into other realms of perceiving. His definition implied for him that ordinary dreams could be used as a hatch that led perception into other regions of energy different from the energy of the world of everyday life and yet utterly similar to it at a basic core. The result of such an entrance was, for sorcerers, the perception of veritable worlds where they could live or die, worlds which were astoundingly different from ours and yet utterly similar. Pressed for a linear explanation of this contradiction, Don Juan Matus reiterated the standard position of sorcerers that the answers to all those questions were in the practice, not in the intellectual inquiry. The art of dreaming, according to what Don Juan taught, originated in a very casual observation that the shamans of ancient Mexico made when they saw people who were asleep. They noticed that during sleep the assemblage point was displaced in a very natural, easy way from its habitual position and that it moved anywhere along the periphery of the luminous sphere or to any place in the interior of it. Correlating their seeing with the reports of the people who had been observed sleeping, they realized that the greater the observed displacement of the assemblage point, the more astounding the reports of events and scenes experienced in dreams. After this observation took hold of them, those sorcerers began to look avidly for opportunities to displace their own assemblage points. They ended up using psychotropic plants to accomplish this. Very quickly, they realized that the displacement brought about by using these plants was erratic, forced, and out of control. In the midst of this failure, nonetheless, they discovered one thing of great value. They called it dreaming attention. Don Juan explained this phenomenon, referring first to the daily awareness of human beings as the attention placed on the elements of the world of everyday life. He pointed out that human beings took only a cursory and yet sustained look at everything that surrounded them. More than examining things, human beings simply established the presence of those elements by a special type of attention, a specific aspect of their general awareness. His contention was that the same type of cursory and yet sustained look, so to speak, could be applied to the elements of an ordinary dream. He called this other, specific aspect of general awareness, dreaming attention, or the capacity that practitioners acquire to maintain their awareness unwaveringly fixed on the items of their dreams. The cultivation of dreaming attention gave the sorcerers of Don Juan's lineage a basic taxonomy of dreams. They found out that most of their dreams were imagery, products of the cognition of their daily world. However, there were some which escaped that classification. Such dreams were veritable states of heightened awareness in which the elements of the dream were not mere imagery but energy-generating affairs. Dreams which had energy-generating elements were, for those shamans, dreams in which they were capable of seeing energy as it flowed in the universe. Those shamans were able to focus their dreaming attention on any element of their dreams and found out in this fashion that there are two kinds of dreams. One is the dreams that we are all familiar with, in which phantasmagorical elements come into play, something which we could categorize as the product of our mentality, our psyche, perhaps something that has to do with our neurological makeup. The other kind of dreams they called energy-generating dreams. Don Juan said that those sorcerers of ancient times found themselves in dreams which were not dreams, but actual visitations made in a dreamlike state to bona fide places other than this world. Real places, just like the world in which we live, places where the objects of the dream generated energy, just as animals or even rocks generate energy in our daily world for a seeing sorcerer. Their visions of such places were, however, for those shamans, too fleeting, too temporary to be of any value to them. They attributed this flaw to the fact that their assemblage points could not be held fixed for any considerable time at the position to which they had been displaced. Their attempts to remedy the situation resulted in the other high art of sorcery, the art of stalking. Don Juan defined the two arts very clearly one day when he said to me that the art of dreaming consisted of purposely displacing the assemblage point from its habitual position. The art of stalking consisted in volitionally making it stay fixed on the new position to which it had been displaced. This fixation allowed the shamans of ancient Mexico the opportunity to witness other worlds in their full extent. Don Juan said that some of those sorcerers never returned from their journeys. In other words, they opted for staying there, wherever there might have been. When the old sorcerers finished mapping human beings as luminous spheres, Don Juan said to me once they had discovered no less than 600 spots in the total luminous sphere that were the sites of bona fide worlds. Meaning that if the assemblage point became attached to any of those places, the result was the entrance of the practitioner into a total new world. But where are those 600 other worlds, Don Juan? The only answer to that question,
and we're not going to give you the answer to that question because you need to read the books. It was getting to that notion there of lucid dreaming. And taking a term Carlos did, as I think he did with lots of people from Buckminster Fuller, in the latter years of his life, creating the organisation Clear Green. He started running these seminars called Transegrity seminars. And I think Transegrity is when you're actually putting together the buckyball, and it's those points on the angles that are the strongest point for that thing to hold together. And he was actually getting people to do that with their body. I could be completely wrong. In terms of like magical passes that shamans would do to bring in the visions, the notion, the enlightenment, the spirits, whoever was assisting them. But at the end of the day, what Carlos Castaneda, in his writings, not so much in his actions, gave the world was insight into Eastern mysticism and philosophy and an ability to digest it that had never been there before. And I'm sure that is correct again of Lobsang Rama. So is it this unconscious intent, even in the midst of becoming an anthropological fraud, do you actually fall into the ability like the dataist use cutter.
Sure.
And all of a sudden the truth starts to unveil itself, whether you intend it to be that way or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And his charisma sort of carried that forward. Was he just a product of the time and the zeitgeist, as you said, where the attendance to churches were collapsing and people were looking for alternatives? And you know, the 70s, there was a huge boom in the notion of the supernatural and the paranormal.
People were wearing pyramids on their heads and all kinds of stuff.
And I think, too, with LSD being synthesized, people looking for an alternative that was less dangerous, less harmful, and more natural, going into the plant world, then you've got to understand how did people down there utilizing these things ancestrally going on years understand the quality and properties of these plants.
I think you've got to be, you know, unless you're born into that culture, you're kind of, I don't know. It's a hard one, isn't it? That you just like weekend, you know, I'm going to go down and do some ayahuasca this weekend, but you know.
But what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for the better of the people around you, or are you just doing it for
They're doing it for your own personal
enlightenment?
For your own personal enlightenment, and that's not what you just whacked me in the head.
Yeah, but I love you.
Oh, well, that makes it okay. How do you want my hair this week? Anyway, you know, it's like, you know, these things where they go into these cultures and try and partake of their spiritual ways. If you haven't been born into it and you don't really understand it and it's not part of you and the way you live.
Because popular culture usurps this stuff all the time, don't they? I mean,
that's your cultural
look at where tattoos were derived from and where they are now.
Yeah, exactly. And what do they mean? You know, it's like, don't you know when your child was born? Don't you remember your child's name? Do you really have to, you know, permanently tattoo it on you? I mean, that's, you know, I don't know.
If Carlos and a lot of authors and scholars say if he just come clean with the goods and said that his books are a pastiche and it's magical realism, there may be some truth in there, there may not. He might have been deemed one of the greatest romanticistic writers of the 20th century.
Yeah, but a lot of people flock to it, you know.
It show me the money, and he got the money. He became a multimillionaire.
He was shown the money, you know, and people. I mean, you know, if something's doesn't actually resonate with people, they're not going to go for it. And boy, did they go for this! It was really, I don't know if it was, you know, something that was, you know, at the time it was just what people needed, and they just went for it, or there was something to it. Who knows? Who knows?
You know what? I think the brain is the storeroom of our imaginations that we can then take what we dream of and place it into the world. And when we place it into the world, it takes on a life of its own.
You can manifest things.
It's like,
I truly believe that.
Yeah. I mean, we could go viral overnight, but I doubt it completely. But it is that thing of like, if you take your thoughts and put them into action, whether your actions are entirely sincere or not, something happens out there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, whammo.
A snowball.
You're
a
runaway
snowball thing.
bestseller.
Well, yeah, it's happened a lot.
Look, in the course of doing that little bit of research, and we've always wanted to do Carlos, we've always found it fascinating because that book got to me right by the time it was published. Being a 10-year-old in a conservative family, it was a little eccentric.
Yeah.
That book took me into another world.
I bet it did.
Yeah. Not necessarily a brilliant one either at times, but hey.
It was another world, you know.
Speaking of interesting authors from the 20th century, as we wind up here, this podcast, 108, the inspiration for Luke Skywalker. I mean, what in the hell was George Lucas making?
So George Lucas based, you know, his two main characters from Star Wars on Carlos and Don Juan, you know. So
let's go to H.P. Lovecraft. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hither harmed us little, but someday piercing together a disconcerted knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a dark new age.
Okay.
I've taken us right back to last week's episode.
Haven't you?
And that is very incisive of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
So, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. The work of James Fox, the work of Carlos Castaneda, the work of Lobsang Rama.
Yeah.
We need to keep an eye on the sky, shut the windows if you see the fog coming. Our hearts reach out to people. And before we go, can you give me 3 of the phobias people have when it comes to space and celestial objects? Aspasia, my love.
Sorry?
Have you heard of the fear of space? Because it's always expanding. Its vastness, it's dark. There's a lot of empty space. And so people have phobias of space.
Unless they've been out there.
But just the thought of it is a phobia itself.
Think about
looking
it.
up in the sky.
Stop thinking about it.
So they are called, now Horace will know this,
Yeah.
astrophobia,
Mm.
cosmophobia,
Mm.
and space phobia.
Okay. Okay. There you
Yeah,
go.
we met someone once, and I can't remember the name for that phobia, that had an absolutely out of control fear of Mexican wrestling masks.
Oh, that's insane. It just don't have anything to do with them. And you know what?
The Lucho Libres, I'd hate to lose
Okay, the
that
Lucha
world.
Libres, they're more on this planet. You might come across them. But having a fear of space, I mean, unless you're going to go to the moon, there's no need to worry about space and the cosmos and
And
what
then
was
it's
the other
highly
one?
questionable they're going to be able to get there. Well, at least.
Well, that's what I
in the
mean.
next-
No one's going in the
We're
next
supposed
year
to
or
be there
so.
now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we've been supposed to be going, we were supposed to be there years ago, and we still haven't been.
There's a lot of
able to
great probe work
Thank you.
happening at the moment. It's
Probe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going there. Unmanned
Okay.
craft. You know,
Okay.
a lot of other countries doing incredible
Yeah,
breakthroughs.
well, let's wait and see when they get the next man on the moon, and
We'll get Jaron here to pull that apart completely.
I'd like to be here to witness that.
You will
Again.
be.
Well, we'll see. They keep postponing.
Do you think it'll
every
be the
year.
second greatest day since creation? All right.
I don't know. Who
Ladies
knows?
and gentlemen, you're with the incredible Untold Radio. We're down south Anomalies. My
We
name's
are.
Jay Katz, and this is my beautiful wife, Aspasia. We wish you have the best week ever. JC, your site is unbelievable. All our love goes out to Berlin, Belgium, lots of other countries around the world.
Yeah.
The US, we have an
Got a
extraordinary.
nice little international community,
Yeah,
don't
we've
we?
got Malcolm there in Britain.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got an extraordinary community in the US. I
Oh,
think there's
well,
at least
yeah,
3 people listening to us there.
At least.
Catherine's one of them, our moderators. All right. Take good care. If it's night, good night. If it's morning, good morning. If it's lunchtime, start eating. Or if you're calming down, you don't need to eat that much.
No,
Let's
you
not
don't.
live in a supersized world.
But we'll be back next week with
Well, we've got some interesting
we
things
have
about
interesting things
sleep
popping
like
up.
you wouldn't
Absolutely.
believe.
No,
We're
you
going
wouldn't believe
live.
it. You'd
into
have
the
to
terra firma.
tune in to believe it.
Yeah.
But we'll see you next week.
And look, Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda, those paperbacks.
Tilting
are
at
there.
windmills, do you think? Maybe?
I don't
No.
think so. I think there's some truth in there.
Sure.
Now, whether he came with that as the strength of an anthropologist, but he's got his doctorate through it, doesn't really matter.
Doesn't really
It's the
matter.
chicken of the egg.